The house that keeps the prints. I woke to the sight of muddy footprints trailing across my bedroom floor, snaking from the doorway to the edge of my bed. My heart stuttered. It hadn't rained in weeks. The prints were fresh, caked with damp earth, glistening faintly in the moonlight that slipped through my curtains. They weren't mine. Too large, too heavy, the toes splayed in a way that felt wrong. I lay frozen, my breath shallow, eyes darting to the corners of the room. Nothing moved. The house was silent, but it was the kind of silence that presses against your ears, thick and unnatural. I live alone. No pets, no roommates, just me in this creaky old house at the edge of town. The nearest neighbor is a quarter-mile away, separated by fields of brittle grass and a sagging wire fence. I lock the doors before bed, always do. Windows too. I'm careful like that. But those footprints were real, undeniable, smeared across the hardwood like an accusation. I forced myself to sit up, the sheets clinging to my clammy skin. The air felt heavy, like someone had just left the room. I grabbed my phone from the nightstand, my fingers trembling as I turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dark, illuminating the prints. They started at the threshold of my bedroom door, uneven and deliberate, as if whoever left them had taken their time. I followed the trail backward, my bare feet cold against the floor, avoiding the mud like it might burn me. The prints led down the hallway, past the closed bathroom door, through the living room, and straight to the front door, which was still locked. The deadbolt was in place, the chain undisturbed. My stomach twisted. I checked the windows, every single one. All locked, latches secure. No broken glass, no signs of forced entry. Just those footprints, starting at the door and ending at my bed. I stood there, staring at the front door, my phone's light shaking in my hand. The mud was still wet, glistening like it had been left minutes ago. I wanted to call someone, anyone, but it was 3 in the morning, and who would believe me? I barely believed myself. I didn't sleep the rest of the night. I sat on the couch, a kitchen knife in my lap, listening for any sound. The house stayed quiet, but it wasn't a comforting quiet. It felt like the quiet of something waiting. By dawn, I was exhausted, my eyes gritty, my nerves frayed. I checked the floor again. The footprints were still there, but they looked different. Fainter, like the mud was drying into the wood, sinking into the grain. I grabbed a mop and scrubbed until my arms ached, but the stains wouldn't budge. It was like the house wanted to keep them. That day, I tried to go about my routine. Made coffee, checked emails, pretended everything was fine. But my eyes kept drifting to the floor, to those faint, stubborn marks. I told myself it was a prank, maybe kids from town messing with me. But deep down, I knew that didn't add up. No one could have gotten in without leaving a trace. Broken locks, scuffed paint, something. And those footprints, they didn't look like they belonged to anyone I could imagine. By evening, I was jumping at every creak of the house. I called my friend Sarah, told her I'd had a weird night, downplaying it so I wouldn't sound unhinged. She laughed, said I was probably just stressed, maybe imagined it. I didn't argue. I wanted to believe her. But when I hung up, the house felt bigger, emptier. I locked the doors again, checked the windows twice, and dragged a chair under the bedroom door handle for good measure. I wasn't taking chances. Sleep came in fits and starts, my dreams jagged and restless. I saw the footprints again, but in the dreams, they didn't stop at my bed. They climbed the walls, smeared across the ceiling, looping in patterns that made my head hurt. I woke with a start, my heart pounding, the room pitch black. My phone was dead, though I'd charged it before bed. I fumbled for the lamp, but when I flicked the switch, nothing happened. The power was out. I held my breath, listening. The silence was back, heavier than before. And then I heard it, a faint, hollow whisper, like wind moving through a tunnel. It wasn't coming from outside. It was in the room with me. My skin prickled, every hair standing on end. I couldn't make out words, but it felt like a voice, low and deliberate, curling around me like smoke. I stayed perfectly still, afraid to move, afraid to breathe too loudly. The whisper stopped, but the air didn't feel right. It was too thick, too warm, like the room was holding its breath too. I don't know how long I sat there, rigid, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. But when morning came, and light crept through the curtains, I saw them again. New footprints. Fresh, wet, leading from the door to my bed. And this time, they didn't stop at the edge. They circled it. The footprints circled my bed like a trap. I stared at them, my pulse hammering in my throat. They were fresh, the mud still slick, pooling in the grooves of the hardwood. The same heavy, splayed toes, the same deliberate tread. But now they formed a ring around where I'd slept, a perfect, unbroken loop. I hadn't heard a thing. Not a creak, not a step. Just that hollow whisper in the dark, lingering in my memory like a bad dream. I didn't want to get out of bed. My legs felt heavy, like they knew something I didn't. But staying there, surrounded by those prints, felt worse. I slid to the edge of the mattress, careful not to step on the mud, and grabbed my shoes from the floor. My phone was still dead, the lamp useless. The power was still out, and the house felt colder than it should have, even for early morning. I moved slowly, eyes scanning every shadow, every corner. The silence was back, pressing against me. I followed the footprints again, retracing their path. They started at the front door, same as before. Still locked, still chained. No scratches, no signs of tampering. My chest tightened. I checked the windows again, every latch, every pane. Nothing. It was like the footprints had appeared out of nowhere, summoned by the house itself. I stood in the living room, staring at the floor, trying to make sense of it. The marks were fainter now, like they were sinking into the wood again. But they were there. Real. I needed to get out. Grabbed my keys, my jacket, and headed for the door. But as I reached for the deadbolt, I froze. The air shifted, just slightly, like someone had exhaled behind me. I turned, half expecting to see nothing, but my eyes caught something in the hallway mirror. A flicker, a shape, too quick to make out. My breath caught. I spun around, but the hallway was empty. Just the footprints, mocking me. I drove to town, my hands gripping the wheel too tight. The coffee shop was open, warm, full of people who didn't know about muddy footprints or whispers in the dark. I ordered a coffee, sat in a corner, and tried to think. Maybe I was losing it. Stress, like Sarah said. Or maybe I'd missed something. A loose window, a hidden crack in the foundation. But those prints, they weren't random. They had purpose. They wanted me to see them. I spent the day in town, avoiding my house. I bought a new phone charger, some batteries, a flashlight that could blind someone. I called an electrician to check the power, left a voicemail with a locksmith to change the locks. Practical steps, things I could control. But the whole time, my mind kept drifting back to that whisper. It wasn't just a sound. It felt like it knew me, like it was testing me. I shook it off, told myself I was being ridiculous. But I didn't believe it. By late afternoon, I couldn't stall anymore. The house was waiting. I drove back slowly, the fields stretching out around me, the sky turning bruised purple. When I pulled into the driveway, the house looked wrong. The windows seemed darker, the shadows deeper. I sat in the car for a long time, the new flashlight in my lap, before I worked up the nerve to go inside. The footprints were still there, but they'd changed again. The circle around my bed was tighter now, the mud drier, flaking at the edges. I checked the rest of the house, flashlight beams slicing through the dusk. Nothing else was out of place. No moved furniture, no open cabinets. Just the prints. I plugged in my phone, watched it flicker to life. The electrician called back, said he'd come tomorrow. The locksmith didn't answer. That night, I didn't sleep in my bed. I dragged a blanket to the couch, kept the flashlight on, pointed at the hallway. I told myself I'd stay awake, keep watch. But exhaustion won. My eyes closed, and the dreams came again, footprints crawling up the walls, across the ceiling, spiraling into shapes that hurt to look at. And that whisper, louder now, weaving through the dream like a thread. It wasn't words, not exactly, but it felt like a question. Like it was asking me to answer. I woke to darkness, the flashlight dead in my hand. My phone was off again, though I'd left it charging. The air was thick, warm, like it had been last night. I fumbled for the light switch, but the power was still out. And then I heard it, the whisper, soft and close, coming from the hallway. My skin crawled. I gripped the flashlight like a weapon, its weight useless now. The whisper stopped, and for a moment, I thought it was over. Then I saw them. New footprints. Leading from my couch to the front door. And this time, the door was wide open. The front door gaped open, a black rectangle against the night. I stood frozen, the dead flashlight heavy in my hand. The footprints led straight to it, their muddy edges sharp in the moonlight. My chest felt tight, like I couldn't get enough air. I hadn't heard the door open. No creak, no click of the deadbolt. Just that whisper, curling through the dark, and now this, my house exposed, the night spilling in. I edged toward the door, my bare feet silent on the cold floor. The footprints were fresh, the mud glistening, as if someone had just walked through. I reached the threshold and peered outside. The fields were still, the grass silver under the moon. No one was there. No car, no figure, just the endless stretch of nothing. I grabbed the door handle, my fingers slick with sweat, and slammed it shut. The deadbolt snapped into place, the chain rattling as I hooked it. My hands shook so badly I dropped the flashlight. It hit the floor with a dull thud. I backed away, eyes locked on the door. The whisper was gone, but the silence wasn't any better. It felt alive, watching me. I turned on every light I could, even the battery-powered lamp I'd bought in town. The house looked normal in the glow, furniture in place, no shadows lurking. But those footprints. They were everywhere now, not just in the hallway. A faint trail looped through the kitchen, another snaked into the bathroom. I hadn't noticed them before. Or maybe they hadn't been there. I grabbed my phone, now at 10% battery despite being plugged in. I called Sarah again, my voice low, like I was afraid of being overheard. She picked up, groggy, annoyed. I told her about the footprints, the open door. She went quiet for a long time, then said I should call the police. I didn't want to. What would I say? My house is leaving footprints. My door opened itself? But she insisted, said she'd come over in the morning. I thanked her, hung up, and dialed 911. The operator was calm, her voice steady. I explained as best I could, leaving out the whisper, the way the air felt wrong. 2 officers arrived 20 minutes later, their flashlights bobbing in the driveway. They were polite, thorough. Checked the doors, the windows, the yard. No signs of a break-in, they said. The footprints puzzled them. They took photos, asked if I had any enemies, anyone who might want to scare me. I shook my head. I'm nobody, I wanted to say. Just a woman in a quiet house. They left after an hour, promising to file a report. I didn't feel safer. The footprints were still there, fainter now, like they were mocking me. I dragged the couch across the living room and wedged it against the front door. It wouldn't stop anything, but it made me feel better. I sat there, wrapped in a blanket, the lamp casting long shadows. My phone died again, no matter how many times I plugged it in. The house was too quiet, the kind of quiet that makes you afraid to move. I must have dozed off, because I woke to a sound, a soft thump, like something heavy settling. My eyes snapped open. The lamp was still on, but the light seemed dimmer, like it was struggling. I listened, my heart in my throat. Another thump, this time from the hallway. I gripped the blanket, my knuckles white. The footprints were still there, circling the couch now, a new ring I hadn't seen before. My breath hitched. I hadn't heard anyone walk. Hadn't heard anything but that thump. I stood, my legs shaky, and grabbed the kitchen knife I'd left on the coffee table. The thumping stopped, but the whisper was back, low and steady, coming from the bedroom. It wasn't words, not really, but it felt like it was calling me. I didn't want to go. Every part of me screamed to stay put, to wait for morning. But the whisper pulled, like a hook in my chest. I took a step, then another, the knife trembling in my hand. The hallway was dark, the lamp's light barely reaching it. The footprints glowed faintly, like they were soaking up the shadows. I followed them, my breath shallow, the whisper growing louder with every step. It wasn't just in the bedroom now. It was everywhere, in the walls, in the air. I reached the bedroom door and pushed it open. The room was empty, the bed untouched. But the footprints were there, spiraling across the floor, up the walls, across the ceiling. And in the center of the room, where my bed stood, was a single, perfect handprint. Pressed into the mattress, like someone had been lying there, waiting. The handprint sank into the mattress, its edges sharp, like it had been carved. I stared at it, the knife slipping in my sweaty grip. The whisper was gone, but the air felt heavier, like the room was holding its breath. The footprints spiraled around me, up the walls, across the ceiling, a dizzying pattern that made my head throb. I wanted to run, to bolt out of the house and never come back. But my feet wouldn't move. It was like the handprint was watching me, daring me to look away. I forced myself to step closer. The print was large, too large for a normal hand, the fingers long and thin, splayed in a way that didn't feel human. The mattress was damp around it, like the mud from the footprints had seeped into the fabric. I reached out, then stopped, my hand hovering. I didn't want to touch it. Didn't want to know what it felt like. But I couldn't just stand there, frozen, while the house closed in around me. I backed out of the room, the knife still in my hand. The hallway felt narrower, the walls closer than they should have been. I checked the couch, still wedged against the front door. The windows were locked, the chain in place. But the footprints were everywhere now, faint trails looping through every room, like the house was stitching itself shut. I grabbed the battery-powered lamp, its light flickering, and sat on the couch. I wasn't going back to that bedroom. Not tonight. Maybe not ever. Morning came slowly, the sky gray and heavy. Sarah arrived around 8, her car crunching on the gravel driveway. I let her in, my voice shaky as I told her about the handprint, the open door, the whisper. She listened, her face pale, but she didn't laugh this time. She walked through the house, her eyes lingering on the footprints, the ones that hadn't faded. When she saw the handprint, she froze, her hand covering her mouth. "You need to leave," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "This isn't right." I wanted to argue, to say it was my home, that I could handle it. But I couldn't. Not after last night. We packed a bag, clothes, toothbrush, my laptop, and drove to her place in town. Her apartment was small, cluttered, full of life. It felt safe. I crashed on her couch, the tension in my chest loosening for the first time in days. But even there, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. The whisper was gone, but its echo lingered, like a splinter in my mind. Sarah made tea, sat across from me, and asked what I was going to do. I didn't know. Call the police again? Hire someone to bless the house? Burn it down? I laughed, but it wasn't funny. She suggested I stay with her for a while, let the electrician and locksmith do their work. Maybe they'd find something, a gas leak, bad wiring, anything to explain it. I nodded, but I didn't believe it. This wasn't a leak or a prank. It was something else, something that knew my name. That night I slept better, but not well. The dreams were back, footprints, handprints, the whisper weaving through them like a thread. I woke to Sarah shaking me, her face tight with worry. "You were talking in your sleep," she said. "Not words. Just sounds." I didn't ask what she meant. I didn't want to know. We went back to the house the next day. The electrician was there, poking at the fuse box. He found nothing wrong, no reason for the power outages. The locksmith changed the locks, gave me new keys. They both looked at the footprints, the handprint, but didn't say much. Professionals staying out of it. I didn't blame them. I barely wanted to be there myself. Sarah stayed with me that evening, her presence grounding. We cleaned the floors again, scrubbed until our hands were raw. The footprints faded, but they didn't disappear. The handprint was still there, sunk into the mattress like a brand. I wanted to throw the mattress out, but something stopped me. It felt like giving up, like letting whatever this was win. That night, we slept in the living room, blankets spread on the floor. The new locks gleamed, the windows secure. But the house didn't feel safe. The air was too still, the shadows too deep. I lay awake, listening for the whisper, for the thump of footsteps. Nothing came. But when I woke at dawn, my heart sank. The handprint was gone from the mattress. In its place was a new one, on the living room floor, right beside where I'd slept. And the whisper was back, soft and close, saying my name. The handprint lay beside me, pressed into the living room floor like a warning. My name hung in the air, whispered in that hollow, curling voice that made my skin crawl. I sat up, my blanket tangled around my legs, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break. Sarah was still asleep, her breathing soft, unaware of the new mark inches from her head. The handprint was fresh, the wood damp around it, the fingers too long, too thin. I wanted to shake her awake, to scream, but I couldn't move. The whisper came again, my name drawn out like a sigh, and this time, it felt like it was inside me. I stumbled to my feet, my eyes darting around the room. The footprints were back, spiraling across the floor, up the walls, looping in patterns that made no sense. They were fainter now, like ghosts of themselves, but they were there. The lamp flickered, its light weak, casting jagged shadows. The house felt alive, its walls breathing, its floorboards groaning under some unseen weight. I grabbed Sarah's shoulder, shaking her gently. Her eyes fluttered open, confused, then widened when she saw the handprint. "We need to go," I said, my voice barely a whisper. She nodded, grabbing her shoes, her bag. We didn't talk, didn't need to. The house was wrong, and we both knew it. We stumbled to the door, my hands fumbling with the new locks. The deadbolt stuck, the chain catching for a moment before it gave. The air outside was cold, sharp, a relief after the suffocating weight of the house. We ran to her car, the gravel crunching under our feet, and didn't look back. We drove to town, the sky still dark, the stars fading. Sarah's hands shook on the wheel, her face pale. "What was that?" she asked, her voice breaking. I didn't answer. I couldn't. My name was still echoing in my head, the whisper following me like a shadow. We stopped at a diner, the kind that's open all night, fluorescent lights buzzing, coffee bitter and strong. I told her everything, the dreams, the footprints, the handprints, the whisper that knew me. She listened, her eyes wide, her fingers twisting a napkin into knots. "We need help," she said finally. "Someone who knows things." She meant a priest, maybe, or someone who dealt with the unexplainable. I nodded, but I felt hollow. Whatever was in my house wasn't going to be fixed with prayers or sage. It was older, hungrier. It knew me, and it wasn't done. We found a woman in town, someone Sarah's cousin knew. She called herself a medium, lived in a cluttered house filled with candles and strange symbols carved into the walls. She listened to my story, her eyes sharp, her hands still. "It's not a ghost," she said, her voice flat. "It's something else. Something that's been there longer than the house." She didn't explain, just gave me a charm, a small stone wrapped in wire, and told me to keep it close. I didn't believe in charms, but I took it anyway. We went back to the house that afternoon, the medium with us. She walked through the rooms, her lips moving silently, her fingers brushing the walls. The footprints were gone, the handprint too. The house looked normal, almost peaceful. But the air was still wrong, too thick, too warm. The medium stopped in the bedroom, her eyes fixed on the mattress. "It's here," she said. "It's always been here." She wouldn't say more, just told me to leave, to never come back. I didn't listen. I couldn't. That house was mine, my home, my life. I stayed with Sarah another night, but I went back the next day, alone. The charm was in my pocket, cold against my leg. The house was quiet, the floors clean, the locks new. I walked through every room, my heart in my throat, waiting for the whisper, the prince. Nothing came. For a moment, I thought it was over. But that night, as I lay on the couch, the charm clutched in my hand, I heard it. The whisper, soft and close, sang my name. The air grew heavy, the shadows deep. I opened my eyes, and there it was, a handprint on the ceiling, directly above me. The footprints were back, circling the room, tighter now, closing in. The whisper grew louder, not one voice but many, overlapping, pulling at me. I clutched the charm, my knuckles white, and prayed for dawn. But deep down I knew. The house wasn't mine anymore. It never had been. The house that draws. The house was too quiet. Not the kind of quiet that feels peaceful, but the kind that presses against your eardrums, like the air itself is holding its breath. I'd moved in 3 weeks ago, a small place on the edge of town, cheap because it had been empty for years. The realtor said it was a steal. I didn't ask why it was so cheap. I should have. My bedroom was still half unpacked, boxes stacked against the wall like forgotten promises. I was exhausted, the kind of tired that makes your bones ache, so I decided to clean under the bed before collapsing. That's when I found it. A piece of paper, yellowed at the edges, crumpled like someone had tried to hide it. I smoothed it out on the floor. It was a child's drawing, done in crayon. A stick figure lay in a bed, eyes closed, mouth a flat line. Above it stood another figure, tall, thin, with no face. Just a blank oval where a face should be. The stick figure in the bed had my hair color, my favorite red pajamas. My hands shook as I stared at it. I told myself it was nothing. Kids draw creepy things all the time. Probably left by the previous owner's child, some imaginative little artist who liked to scare themselves. But the house had been empty for years. No kids had lived here in decades, according to the neighbors. I shoved the drawing into a drawer, out of sight, and tried to sleep. The silence in the house felt heavier now, like it was watching me. The next morning, I woke to the sound of scratching. Faint, like a mouse skittering in the walls. I checked the traps I'd set out. No bait taken, no tiny bodies. The noise came again that night, louder, closer. It wasn't a mouse. It was deliberate, like someone dragging a nail across wood. I sat up in bed, heart pounding, listening. The sound stopped as suddenly as it started. I didn't sleep much after that. Days passed, and the scratching became a routine. Always at night, always from the walls. I started noticing other things. The air in the house felt thick, like walking through fog. Objects moved, nothing dramatic, just a book slightly askew on the shelf, a mug turned backward in the cupboard. I told myself I was being careless, that moving stress was getting to me. But I started locking my bedroom door at night. One evening, I found another drawing. This one was tucked inside a book I'd been reading, one I hadn't touched in days. Same crude crayon style, same faceless figure. This time, it stood closer to the bed, one stick hand hovering over the sleeping figure's face. My face. I burned the drawing in the kitchen sink, watching the flames curl the paper into ash. The smoke smelled wrong, like damp earth and something sour. I opened all the windows, but the smell lingered. I started researching the house. Old records, newspaper archives, anything I could find online. The library had a file on the property, thin and dusty. In 1974, a family lived here, a couple and their son. The boy vanished one night. No ransom, no trace. The parents moved away soon after. The article didn't say much else, just that the case was never solved. I kept digging, but the trail went cold. Still, I couldn't shake the feeling that the boy's disappearance was tied to the drawings. The scratching grew worse. It wasn't just in the walls now. It was above me, below me, like the house itself was alive. I stopped sleeping altogether, surviving on coffee and paranoia. I bought a flashlight, kept it by my bed. One night, the scratching stopped, replaced by a new sound. A whisper. Not words, just a soft hiss, like air escaping a tire. It came from the closet. I didn't open the door. I couldn't. My body wouldn't move. The next day, I called a contractor to check the walls for pests. He found nothing, no signs of rodents, no nests, no damage. But he did find something else. Behind a loose panel in the closet, there was a small crawl space. He didn't go in, just shone his light inside and said it looked empty. I didn't tell him about the whispers. I didn't want him to think I was losing it. That night, I couldn't take it anymore. I grabbed the flashlight and pried the panel loose myself. The crawl space was narrow, barely wide enough for a child to fit through. The air inside was cold, colder than it should have been. My light caught something on the far wall, another drawing. This one was different. The faceless figure wasn't standing over the bed anymore. It was inside the wall, its blank face pressed against the wood, like it was trying to push through. The sleeping figure, me, wasn't in bed. It was in the wall too, eyes wide open, mouth stretched in a scream. I dropped the flashlight. The bulb shattered, plunging me into darkness. The whispering started again, louder, closer, like it was right behind me. I scrambled out of the closet, slammed the door, and shoved a dresser in front of it. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I didn't sleep that night. I sat on the couch, staring at the closet door, waiting for something to happen. Nothing did. But the silence was worse than the noise. I'm still in the house. I don't know why I haven't left. Maybe it's because I need to know what's happening. Maybe it's because I'm too scared to move. The drawings keep appearing, under pillows, in cabinets, slipped between pages of books. Each one is worse than the last. The faceless figure is always closer. Last night, I heard the whisper again. This time, it said my name. Morning light didn't make the house feel safer. It just made the shadows sharper, like they were waiting for night to stretch out again. I hadn't slept in days, not properly. My eyes burned, and my thoughts felt like they were slipping, like trying to hold water in my hands. The crawl space haunted me. I couldn't stop picturing that drawing, the faceless thing pressed against the wall, its blank stare boring into me. I decided to board up the closet. I didn't have tools, so I drove to the hardware store, the one on the edge of town that smelled like sawdust and oil. The clerk, an older man with deep lines in his face, asked what I needed the wood for. I mumbled something about home repairs. He didn't push, but his eyes lingered on me, like he knew something I didn't. I bought nails, a hammer, and a few planks, then drove back, the car radio off because I couldn't stand the noise. Back home, I dragged the dresser away from the closet door. It felt heavier than it should have, like the house didn't want me to move it. The closet was just as I'd left it, the panels still loose, the crawl space yawning beyond. I shone my new flashlight inside. The drawing was gone. I checked every corner, every inch of the dusty wood. Nothing. My stomach twisted. I hadn't imagined it. I couldn't have. I nailed the planks across the closet door, each strike of the hammer echoing through the house. The noise felt wrong, like I was waking something up. When I finished, the closet was sealed, but it didn't feel like enough. I pushed the dresser back in place for good measure. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't a good quiet. It was the kind that makes you hold your breath. That night, the scratching came back. Not from the closet, from the ceiling. Slow, deliberate, like someone dragging a knife across the beams. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, my flashlight clutched in one hand. The sound moved, circling above me, then stopped right over my bed. I didn't move. I didn't breathe. Something creaked, like wood bending under weight. I told myself it was the house settling. Old houses do that. But this didn't feel like settling. The next day, I called a priest. I'm not religious, but I was desperate. He was young, younger than I expected, with a nervous smile and a cross necklace that looked too shiny. I didn't tell him about the drawings or the whispers, just that the house felt wrong. He walked through the rooms, muttering prayers, sprinkling holy water. He said he didn't sense anything unusual, but his hands shook when he left. I didn't feel better. The drawings kept appearing. One was taped to the bathroom mirror, showing the faceless figure standing in the doorway of my bedroom, watching me sleep. Another was folded inside my jacket pocket, the stick figure of me running down a hallway that didn't exist in the house. Each one felt like a warning, or maybe a promise. I stopped burning them. It didn't help. The smell of the smoke stayed in my nose, like the house was mocking me. I started hearing footsteps. Not loud, not clear, but soft, like someone tiptoeing just out of sight. They came from the hallway, the kitchen, the attic. Never when I was looking. I set up my phone to record while I slept, hoping to catch something. The video showed nothing but 8 hours of darkness and my own restless tossing. But when I played it back, there was a sound, a faint, rhythmic tapping, like fingers on glass. My bedroom doesn't have a window. I went back to the library, digging deeper. I found a mention of the boy who vanished, a single line in a local paper from 1975. His name was Daniel. He was 7. The article said he'd been obsessed with drawing, always carrying a sketchbook. My skin went cold. I asked the librarian if she knew anything about the house. She hesitated, then said the neighbors used to hear strange noises back then, too. Scratching. Whispers. No one ever found out what happened to Daniel. I stopped going into the bedroom. I slept on the couch, or tried to. The footsteps followed me. The air grew heavier, like it was pressing me down. Last night, I found another drawing. It was under my pillow, though I hadn't been in the bedroom in days. The faceless figure was sitting on the couch, right where I was. The stick figure of me was gone. Just an empty couch, and that blank, oval face staring out of the page. The house isn't mine anymore. I don't know if it ever was. The scratching is louder now, and the whispers are clearer. They don't say my name anymore. They say his. Daniel. I don't know what he wants, but I know he's still here. And I know he's not alone. I couldn't stay on the couch forever. My back ached, my head throbbed, and the house seemed to know it. The air felt thicker every day, like it was trying to choke me. I started keeping the lights on all the time, even during the day. Shadows moved in the corners of my vision, but when I turned, nothing was there. I was losing it. I knew I was. But I couldn't leave. Not yet. I decided to talk to the neighbors. The old woman across the street, Mrs. Hensley, had lived here forever. Her house was tidy, with lace curtains and a garden that smelled like lavender. She invited me in for tea, her hands trembling as she poured. I didn't want to scare her, so I kept it vague, asked if she'd ever noticed anything odd about my house. Her face changed, like she'd been waiting for the question. She said the family who lived there in the 70s was quiet, private. The boy, Daniel, used to sit on the porch, drawing. Always drawing. She never saw him play with other kids. Then one day, he was gone. The police searched the house, the woods, the whole town. Nothing. She leaned closer, her voice low. She said she used to hear things at night, coming from my house. Scratching. And sometimes, a child's voice, crying. I didn't tell her about the drawings. I thanked her and left, her words heavy in my chest. Back home, I found another one. This time, it was pinned to the fridge with a magnet I didn't own. The faceless figure was in the kitchen now, standing by the sink. The stick figure of me was at the table, head in hands like I was giving up. I tore it up and threw it in the trash. An hour later, it was back on the fridge, whole again. I started sleeping with a knife under my pillow. Not that it would help. Whatever was in the house wasn't something you could stab. The footsteps were constant now, pacing outside my door, circling the living room. The whispers grew clearer, forming words I couldn't quite catch, like a radio stuck between stations. I tried talking to it once, shouting into the empty house, asking what it wanted. The air went still, like I'd startled it. Then the scratching started again, louder, angrier. I went back to the crawl space. I had to. The closet door was still boarded up, but the nails were loose, like someone had been pulling at them. I pried the boards off, my hands slick with sweat. The crawl space was darker than before, the air colder. I crawled inside, flashlight shaking in my hand. The walls were covered in drawings now, dozens of them, all in that same childish scrawl. Daniel's drawings. Some showed the faceless figure, others showed a boy, small and scared, hiding in corners, under beds and walls. One drawing showed him in the crawl space, curled up, eyes huge. The faceless figure stood over him. I felt it then, a presence, like someone breathing down my neck. I turned, but no one was there. The flashlight flickered, then went out. I heard a sound, soft and wet, like footsteps in mud. I scrambled out, my heart hammering so hard I thought it would burst. I nailed the boards back up, used every nail I had. The dresser went back in front of the door. It wasn't enough. I knew it wasn't. That night, the whispers turned into a voice. Clear, small, a boy's voice. "Help me!" it said over and over, from every corner of the house. I curled up on the couch, hands over my ears, but it didn't stop. The air grew so heavy I could barely breathe. The lights flickered, then went out. The house was dark, except for the faint glow of my phone. I checked the time, 3:17 a.m. The battery died a second later. I don't know how long I sat there, listening to the boy's voice. It wasn't just, "Help me," anymore. He was saying other things, things I couldn't understand, like he was talking to someone else. The scratching came back, so loud it rattled the windows. I grabbed the knife, held it tight, though my hands were shaking so bad I could barely grip it. The voice stopped. The scratching stopped. The silence was worse. When morning came, I found another drawing. It was on the coffee table, right in front of me. The faceless figure was gone. Instead, it was just the boy, Daniel, standing in the middle of the page. His eyes were black scribbles, his mouth a jagged line. He was holding something, a knife. My knife. I dropped the real one, the blade clattering on the floor. The house was quiet again, but it wasn't empty. I could feel it watching. Waiting. The knife stayed on the floor. I couldn't touch it. Not after seeing it in the drawing, held by that jagged-mouthed boy. My hands wouldn't stop shaking, and the air in the house felt like it was pressing me into the couch, like it wanted me to stay there forever. I didn't want to move, didn't want to look around, but I couldn't stay still either. The house wouldn't let me. I tried leaving. Packed a bag, grabbed my keys, made it to the front door. But the handle wouldn't turn. I twisted it, pulled, pushed, even kicked the door. It didn't budge. The windows were the same, stuck, like they'd been sealed shut. I smashed a chair against one, hoping to break the glass. The chair broke instead, splintering into pieces. The window didn't even crack. I sat on the floor, panting, surrounded by broken wood. The house was trapping me. The boy's voice came again that night. Not just, "Help me," now, but full sentences, whispered so softly I had to strain to hear. "You saw me," he said. "You found me." I didn't answer. I didn't know how. The voice seemed to come from everywhere, ceiling, walls, floor. Sometimes it sounded like he was crying. Sometimes it sounded like he was angry. I kept the lights on, but they flickered, dimming for no reason. The shadows grew longer, sharper, like they were reaching for me. I started searching the house, looking for anything that might explain what was happening. I tore through boxes, checked under furniture, pried up loose floorboards. I found more drawings. They were everywhere, behind the fridge, inside the oven, taped to the underside of the kitchen table. All of them showed Daniel, his black scribble eyes staring out of the page. Sometimes the faceless figure was with him, standing just behind, its blank face tilted like it was curious. Other times, it was just Daniel, holding the knife, his mouth drawn in that awful, jagged line. I found something else, too. In the attic, buried under a pile of dusty insulation, was a small sketchbook. It was old, the pages brittle, the cover stained with something dark. Inside were more drawings, but these were different. They weren't just of the house or the faceless figure. They showed other places, a park, a school, a street that looked like the one outside. In every drawing, Daniel was there, small and scared, and the faceless figure was always nearby, watching. The last page was blank except for one word, scrawled in red crayon. "Stay." I dropped the sketchbook. The air in the attic was so cold it burned my lungs. I heard the boy's voice again, closer now, like he was standing right behind me. "You can't leave." he said. I ran, stumbling down the attic stairs, nearly falling. The sketchbook was still in my hand. I didn't remember picking it up. I stopped sleeping altogether. Couldn't. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw Daniel's face, those black scribbles where his eyes should be. The house was louder now, scratching, footsteps, whispers, all at once, like it was done hiding. I started talking to the voice, begging it to stop, to tell me what it wanted. It didn't answer, not directly. But the drawings kept coming. One showed me in the attic, holding the sketchbook. Another showed me at the front door, trying to leave. The faceless figure was always there, closer each time. I tried calling for help. My phone wouldn't connect. No signal, no internet. The landline was dead, just static that sounded like breathing. I wrote a note, slipped it through the mail slot, hoping someone would find it. The next morning, it was back inside, crumpled on the floor. The house didn't want me to leave, and it didn't want anyone else to know I was here. Last night, the voice changed. It wasn't just Daniel anymore. There was another voice, deeper, colder, like it didn't belong to anything human. It didn't say words, just sounds, guttural, sharp, like it was trying to speak through a mouth that wasn't made for it. The air grew so heavy I could barely move. The lights went out, and the house shook, like something massive was moving through the walls. I found another drawing this morning. It was on my chest when I woke up, though I'd been on the couch, not in bed. It showed Daniel and the faceless figure, side by side, holding hands. The stick figure of me was gone. The page was blank where I should have been. The house is quiet now, quieter than it's ever been. But it's not empty. I can feel them both, watching, waiting. I don't know what they want, but I know I'm running out of time. The house doesn't feel like a house anymore. It's a cage, a living thing that breathes and watches and waits. I haven't eaten in days, can't remember the last time I felt hungry. The air is too thick, too heavy, like it's trying to crush me. The drawings are everywhere now, covering the walls, the floors, the ceiling. I don't know how they get there. I don't know if I'm the one putting them up. Daniel's voice is constant, a soft hum that follows me from room to room. Sometimes he whispers my name, sometimes he cries, sometimes he just breathes, slow and steady, like he's standing right behind me. The other voice, the deeper one, comes and goes. It's louder at night, rattling the windows, shaking the floor. I don't know what it is, but I know it's not Daniel. It's something older, something worse. I tried to destroy the drawings. Tore them up, burned them, soaked them in water. They always come back, whole and untouched, like the house is spitting them out. One showed Daniel in the crawlspace, his black scribble eyes staring at me. Another showed the faceless figure in the living room, sitting on the couch where I'd been sleeping. The worst was the one I found in the bathroom, taped to the mirror. It was just me, standing alone, but my eyes were wrong, black scribbles, like Daniel's. My mouth was a jagged line, like his. I don't sleep anymore. I can't. Every time I close my eyes I feel them closer, like they're waiting for me to let my guard down. The knife is still on the floor. I haven't touched it since I saw it in the drawing. I'm afraid of what it means, what I might do if I pick it up. The house is too quiet now, like it's holding its breath again, waiting for something to happen. I found the sketchbook again, the one from the attic. It was on the kitchen table, open to a new page. The drawing was fresh, the crayon lines still waxy and bright. It showed the house, but not like I know it. The walls were wrong, twisted, like they were melting. Daniel was in the center, small and scared, his hands covering his face. The faceless figure stood behind him, taller than ever, its blank face bigger than the house itself. There was no stick figure of me. I wasn't there. The voices stopped last night. No whispers, no scratching, no footsteps. Just silence, so deep it hurt my ears. I thought it was over, that maybe I'd won. But then I heard it, a creak, slow and deliberate, coming from the closet. The boards were gone, the dresser pushed aside. The crawl space was open again, a black hole in the wall. I didn't want to look, but my feet moved anyway, like the house was pulling me. I crawled inside, flashlight in hand. The walls were covered in drawings, more than before, hundreds of them, overlapping, crowding each other. Daniel was in every one, his face changing, sometimes scared, sometimes angry, sometimes blank, like the faceless figure. The air was freezing, my breath clouding in front of me. I heard the creak again, behind me, inside the crawl space. I turned, but there was nothing, just darkness. Then the flashlight went out. The darkness was absolute, like I'd been swallowed. I felt it then, the presence, closer than ever. Not just Daniel, not just the faceless figure, but something else, something that made my skin crawl and my heart stop. The whispers started again, both voices now, overlapping, shouting, crying, laughing. I couldn't move, couldn't breathe. The air was too heavy, the walls too close. I don't know how I got out. I was on the floor, outside the closet, the flashlight broken beside me. The crawl space was sealed again, the boards back in place, the nails shiny and new. The house was quiet, but it wasn't empty. I could feel them, all of them, watching me. This morning, I found the last drawing. It was in my hand when I woke up, though I don't remember picking it up. It showed the crawl space, empty except for one figure. Not Daniel, not the faceless figure. It was me, my eyes black scribbles, my mouth a jagged line. I was standing in the crawl space, holding the knife. The house isn't quiet anymore. It's singing, a low hum that vibrates in my bones. I don't know what happens next, but I know I'm not alone. They're here, and they're waiting.